Welcome to We Are Augusta, the Women's Financial Forum podcast presented by Trajan Wealth, where we empower fellow women with dignity, wisdom, and prosperity by turning real-life challenges into practical, confidence, and wealth-building strategies. By the end of this episode, you'll have simple language shifts, mindset tools, and real stories to help you stop over-apologizing, set better boundaries, and show up more powerfully in your financial life.
Have you ever started an email with, "Hey, sorry to bug you," or apologize before asking a question about your own money? Today, we're calling that out and rewriting the script. Welcome to We Are Augusta, the Women's Financial Forum podcast presented by Trajan Wealth. We help you plan smarter and dream bigger by turning real financial questions into honest, practical conversations. I am Aaron Simpson. I'm a first-gen college grad, former Indiana Pacers exec, and now a behavioral finance-driven advisor. I've spent more than a decade helping families create wealth instead of chasing it. I know full well how real people feel walking into a money conversation, unsure and even apologetic, and how to turn that into confidence. To my left is Blair Simmons, chartered financial consultant with over a decade of experience in financial advising. As a former college athlete, she learned early how to balance competition, academics, and work, a discipline she continues to apply today as a mother of three. Bravo. She's also grown from people-pleasing to setting firm, healthy boundaries without sacrificing her generous spirit. Up next, we have Jennifer Bennett, who started in 2008's financial crisis. Girl, let's talk about that, right? With dual degrees in psychology and child development, she understands the anxiety behind "I'm sorry to bother you" and how to replace it with healthy questions and boundaries. And last, but certainly in no way least, we have the amazing Marty Bryant, 20 plus years in male-dominated industries. She's done everything from tax advising to running her own firm to leading at Trajan Wealth. She's always lived by her mother's advice: do not leave any what-ifs on the table. I can't wait to hear that story more in detail later. She's learned how to stop asking for permission, fire bad fits, and still be deeply caring. But before we start on the topic of our first episode, I think we should talk about why our name is We Are Augusta. As you know, our show is presented by Trajan Wealth, where you plan smarter, dream bigger. The name Trajan comes from ancient Rome, where philanthropic leader Marcus Augustus, also known as Trajan, led one of the greatest expansions in Roman history. As it turns out, Trajan had a partner, his wife, called Pompeia Plotina. She furthered fairer policies and better education and supported those in need. When a woman was considered to have the greatest prestige and influence equal to the male leader, or the Augustus, she was given the special honorific Augusta, a word that means dignified, noble, and respected by others. We love what it stands for, but as women of today, we prefer that power to come from ourselves directly. We believe every woman can be her own Augusta, owning her influence, her wisdom, and her financial power. Today, we're talking about apologizing, but not as a generic "stop saying sorry" slogan, but as a lens on how we shrink ourselves in money, work, and relationships. We're blending behavioral psychology, decades of advisory experience, and real client stories so taking up space feels natural and not forced. Marty, give me a moment of when it really hit you that working specifically on gaining women's confidence with finance hit you the most.
As you mentioned, I've worked in male-dominated industry for a very, very long time. So the advice my mother gave me, don't leave any what-ifs in your life. That was early on. I was 21 years old. I had an opportunity to open a restaurant. And my mother said, and I called mom and dad, needed some advice on that. And my mother said, "Marty, if this is something that you're going to look back on your life and wonder, what if I had, then go do it." So I dropped out of college. That was one of the times. And I went and opened this restaurant, and I've lived my life that way. I've done so many things. I was a drywall contractor. I ran restaurants and ultimately put myself through college running nightclubs. Got into finance, and I thought that I was immune to the little lady, the woman in a male career. So I lived my life that way. I thought I was even. I thought I was equal to the men because I was into sports. I raced motocross. I did all the things. I was a jock. I was cool, right? And it wasn't until later on in my career, because, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. I was at a conference and I thought I was one of the guys until I wasn't. And I was involved in a conversation, and a couple of the guys just kind of looked at me and were like, gave that look on their face, like, oh, she's just a girl, or, oh, we'll let her speak for a second, and then we'll finish our conversation. And that's when it hit me. I'm not one of the guys, nor will I ever be one of the guys. I had to embrace my feminine, which I hadn't done in my entire career. I've always lived in that masculine world. And that's when I really started noticing and looking around that, we are underserved. And I just didn't realize it because my ego didn't let me. Now I realized, in that moment, that there was a lot of work to be done. And I could be a good vessel to help get that work done.
And I can't wait to hear more stories about how you took that lesson and then empowered your clients and even your friends and your daughter. And so,
And my book of business just organically grew to single women. And it wasn't anything that I was intentionally attracting. It's just how it happened. Because once I shifted my energy and realization, the energy that came to me was different as well.
I always wonder if we can help women before they get hit by that metaphoric bus, right? So, for example, for me, I know some of you know this story, and I'll try to get through it without any tears. But early on in my financial advising career, I was starting my practice, helping families, and my mom, who raised my brother and I by herself completely, like, she was my best friend. She was just my rock, my holder of all my memories. And she was diagnosed with lung cancer. Never smoked a day in her life. She was always the fittest one in our family. We used to joke and say, well, we can't go to the family lunch just yet because mom hasn't worked out. So let her get her workout in. And then she's diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And at diagnosis, they gave her 6 to 10 months to live. And it's just surreal. Like, you can't take that in. And so, being her best friend as well, I watched her worry about her finances and worry about her health. And I thought that was brutal. And as much as I wish I could have saved her from that burden and that weight, I take it every day, my why, when I get up, you guys. Like, who can we help? Who can we help not get hit by that metaphoric bus to then think finances are important? Let's do it before that, not get hit by the bus and now what do we do? Don't be reactive. That's perfect. Yeah. Jen, what about you? Anything that comes to mind about this topic? Why is this important to you?
Well, I think I didn't realize until it was brought to my attention that women may feel a certain way or have certain feelings behind approaching their financial advisor that puts them in a position of often leading with an apology, which is odd to me because I've never felt that way. I feel similarly to Marty in that I've never felt any different than masculine beings in this space. And so I think about it from a generational perspective as well. If I think about my mother was much more career driven than the generation prior to her. Both of my grandmothers didn't per se have careers outside of the home. One of my grandmothers never had her driver's license, lived to age 96, never had a driver's license. The other grandmother didn't get a driver's license until she had 4 or 5 kids at home and simply wanted to go to the library. So my mother, after, for them, the next generation, my mother, she was much more career driven from an early age, and she still had a family, but she was always outside the home working in business. And so I thought that felt natural. I felt I always needed to be the one to take care of myself. There was no redundant backup of anyone else in the world that was going to take care of me besides me. And so as a professional starting to develop relationships with clients, it became more apparent when I would have a client request a female advisor. They wanted a female advisor instead of a male. And I thought that was interesting at first, but it did start to make sense after developing relationships over the years. Because I think some women can come from a place of lacking the confidence of knowing what questions to ask, knowing where to start the conversation. It's kind of an itch you can't scratch where you know there's an important discussion that needs to take place, but you're not sure where to start it. So I try to bring that structure to my relationships so that women or the feminine folks don't have to feel that way in approaching the conversation.
Yeah, that's great, Jen. I can't help but wonder as well if there's not a stereotype perhaps with financial advising, that it's you walk into an office and it's all about the numbers and it's all about the figures and the stats and the stock and this bond and the market. And in reality, Blair, what do you say? There's a lot more to that. And what does this podcast mean to you?
Well, what does it mean to me? I think it means so many things that it's really hard to pinpoint. My mom, born in 1950, once she graduated her class of about 25 people in a very rural part in Illinois, the options were pretty much, stay-at-home mom or become a secretary. And my mom was really a trailblazer in that way when she decided to pick up her things, not stay in the rural community, and go to nursing school in St. Louis, Missouri. And so that was odd. That wasn't the norm at 18. And so that's what she did. And so, when my sister and I came along, she set a great example for us of, really becoming whatever it is that we sought out to become. And my dad did the same. He's so encouraging in terms of, empowering us as women and making us believe that anything we wanted to accomplish, we could. And going back to what you said about boundaries and boundary setting, I think the transition point for me is when I stopped viewing boundaries as walls and instead started viewing them as doors with intentional opening and closing times. Because it's easy, sitting here with such strong women to kind of say, well, yeah, I never felt any different either. But that's not true for me. I did immediately feel different coming into the financial advising space as a woman and as a minority. And so it's been a blessing. I am so thankful to be here with these ladies today because they're so strong and poised. And that's not something that I've always been in this space. And so setting those boundaries and helping empower other women to begin to do those same things, and not just professionally, but also personally and financially. Setting those boundaries and realizing that the more clarity you provide to others in your life, whether that's your clients, your family, your friends, the more kindness that really is felt from that, because they have more clarity around your expectations, and people rise to the consistencies that you model. And so that has been a huge transition point just as a woman in the financial space.
Well, and I think one thing that you just made me think of, it's highly unusual to have 4, 5, even 6 women of I'm just going to say it, of our caliber together, and the experiences that we've had in the financial services industry as advisors, because there's not a whole lot of us. There really isn't. And when we all get together, it's an absolute riot, because the stories that we have as our experience, they're similar. There's a lot of similar undertones to it. But I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I was independent with a business partner and I didn't have other women around me. I didn't have that opportunity. So having this opportunity and being with a company that truly does embrace women, there are so many women that work here in so many different levels. It's phenomenal to have this interaction and feed off the experiences that each one of us has had. And hopefully that's going to translate to all of you becoming your own Augusta, you creating and living your life as your Augusta, as your champion, and finding that voice that's inside of you that maybe you haven't tapped into yet.
I love that.
I love you guys. This is phenomenal. And I cannot wait to share all of this with all of you. And that is why connecting with these women has changed how I show up in every room. And that's why I wanted them here for you as well. Today's question is simple. What happens when women stop apologizing and start owning their seat at the financial table and start recognizing that we have as much right to take that space as any other person on the planet? Stay with us. Welcome back to We Are Augusta, where we empower fellow women with dignity, wisdom, and prosperity. We're here with myself, Erin Simpson, and your co-hosts, Marty, Jennifer, and Blair. Now, when someone sits down with you and immediately starts explaining or apologizing for every financial detour, divorce, kids, pauses in their career, how do you help them stop beating themselves up and focus on the courage it took just to show up? What comes to mind?
Well, I'll go first. So I like to meet people where they're at in life. When they come in the door, and it's men and women both. It's not gender specific. And they sit down, well, I'm behind, I'm not where I should be, I started late, I divorced, whatever it is, I let them get it out, and then I say, okay, that's enough of that. We're done. We're not going to address that anymore. This is where we're at now. And the decisions we make from here moving forward are the only ones that are going to matter.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, whether you have $25,000 or $25 million. Everybody needs answers to the questions that they have. There's no one size fits all solution for people.
Yeah. I found it really interesting when I first got into the business that it didn't matter if someone walked in my door with $5,000 or $5 million, right? It became the fact that each person felt like they should have more.
Right.
And what is it with that concept of more? I don't understand that. And so I stopped just trying to figure out where they've come from. But again, I would call it the judgment-free zone. Mm-hmm. I would say, look, this is a judgment-free zone. Mm-hmm. You walked into the door. Let's applaud you for that first and foremost, because that's scary. That's a big first step. Right. Kind of like tuning in today might be a helpful first step. Yeah. But this is a judgment-free zone. So let's talk about where we're going from here.
Well, and then again, even the concept of more.
Yeah.
Why do you think you need more? How are you going to spend that more? Who gave you the idea that you needed more? Why do you feel like you're not fine just the way you are? And that's where you have to find your rhythm and your voice. And the only reason why you think you need more is because you probably saw it somewhere on TV. Somebody said something on a radio show. Somebody said on a podcast. But you don't know until you sit down with someone who can help answer those questions for you.
Yeah. It's the old cliche of keeping up with the Joneses. But why don't we define our own more and enough, right? There was a study out that I read way back, and it said with finances, it's important to not just have a number as the goal, but more of a specific goal that you're trying to reach. Mm-hmm. And because, you take back and look at Bernie Madoff. They gave that example, right? In the study, they said Bernie Madoff was very successful prior to his big Ponzi scheme, but he always wanted the next thing because there's some point where it's all about the money, and the more money you make, the more you fear it's going to go away. Yeah. So we got to define that as I'm happy and content, even though it's important to strive for the life you want and define that specifically.
Part of that is, it reminds me, when you're listening to you, Erin, reminds me of the hedonic treadmill. Have you heard about that?
No, tell me more.
It's where it's like hedonism. It comes from the word hedonism. So the hedonic treadmill, and you're on this treadmill that just never stops, right? When you get on that treadmill, and you're aiming towards that goal, once you get there, that feels normal, right? You up your lifestyle, you increase your standard of living to meet that new level when your income goes up, right? Your means go up, your standards go up, and then that kind of just continues to go. And so there's no ceiling to that. There's like this infinite reach that we can have for that never-ending grasp towards this ambiguous level that we never quite actually reach or attain. And so I think it really emphasizes the link between happiness and financial security, or where money and happiness and well-being connect.
Yeah.
The well-being aspect, I think, is super important because it all ties together. It's the well-being, it's the health.
And knowing that when clients walk into your office, or even if friends are just chatting with you, how do you help them feel confident enough to have that conversation, to feel like they're worthy of being at the table with you?
I think it's just a part of helping people realize where they're at for real, and understanding their cash flow better and what it means to them, and what it needs to look like going forward, relative to where they are now, or maybe what we have now is sufficient, but we just have no plan or clarity. So I think sometimes just bringing people back to where they are now and doing those, having those tough, quote unquote, tough conversations or difficult moments to actually go through a cash flow analysis and see, this is what we're bringing in, this is what's going out. Or another really fun exercise can be, okay, if someone's coming in with the mindset of, I don't have enough, I need more. Well, what would you do with more?
Ooh, that's good. I like that.
Where's it going? So if we've got X amount per month coming in, what are we doing with this?
Yeah, the reality check.
Because a lot of the time there's no answer, and it takes people a really long time to figure out, what am I doing with more? This idea of more. And why do I have this? Like you said, it's keeping up with the Joneses.
To touch on something that Jen just said about, the treadmill and wanting more and more, that's not necessarily, it doesn't provide security. And it actually, in my opinion, takes security away. So let's correlate it to husband and wife, okay? And always, and we know this, there's always one person in the relationship that handles the finances. And again, it's not gender specific. It's usually who balanced the checkbook first, right? There, okay, now you're in charge. And so let's say that now something happens to this relationship. Relationship's over, now there's a divorce. The person who handled the finances is probably going to feel much more secure than the person who didn't. That's the person who's going to be lost. And if they were on that treadmill, right, of more and more and more, and they're changing their lifestyle to fit their wallet instead of saving more and really digging down into what do we want as our goal instead of the goal of more, what's the purpose of the goal, then that person is the one that's going to need the answers. And in this case, just exactly what we're talking about, it usually does fall on the woman. And that's just the traditional way it has been. In finance, we all know that. So now she has to find a way to get those answers. The designation I hold is Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, and I've seen it time and time again. They don't know what they have. They don't know where it is. They don't know what it means. What does money even mean? And that's where, when we're having these conversations and trying to draw them out, you have to ask them the questions. And as soon as you start talking, as soon as that person starts talking about what they don't know or where, draw them out, let them talk.
Yeah.
That way you really understand what their fears are. And I think what they're going to find when they're done saying it all, their fears really aren't as large or as warranted as they think they should be.
Yeah. It's
Right?
always heavier inside, isn't it?
It's 100% heavier inside. And money, as people can romanticize having money. It's a necessary evil in life. We all have to have some kind of currency in order to live. But I think once we can take that magic away, take away the power that you feel it has over you, now we can get you the answers to the questions that you're too scared to ask, which are usually, do I have enough? Am I going to be okay?
And so often, Marty, you really just hit it there. Like sometimes it's just the unknown, little things like, what benefits do you have through work? Are you maxing them out?
Right.
What are you doing with what's already on the table? And so oftentimes, like you said, there's usually that dominant spouse that is handling the finances. And it's those little conversations that can come up during, a planning meeting where, that spouse that is not at the table comes to the table and says, oh, wait, I do have this 401k with the match from my company. I do have this HSA that we're not using and so many other areas. So,
Yeah.
And I would say to our friends and to our audience and to our loved ones, if you do have a financial advisor and they're not asking both of you questions, pay attention to that, right? And if you're not meeting with a financial advisor, still have exercises or routines where you can ask your spouse or your significant other, what is the money situation? And you can make it fun. So something, and look, don't judge me here, right? Judgment-free zone. We're in the judgment-free zone. But once a month, my spouse and I will go to dinner, and on the way to dinner, we pick up a lottery ticket. Okay, again, judgment-free. Not many, just
Can't
one.
win if you don't play.
Oh, okay. but here's what it prompts. One, it prompts lightheartedness, right? And we're scratch it off. And before we scratch it off, we're saying, if we won the lottery, what would change if all of our financial worries went away?
right. What do you do with more?
What do you do with more? And I don't want to say like it's not okay to want more, right? Like I came from very little means, and I've been with a partner who always thought I was money hungry. And guys, I'm not money hungry. I'm security hungry. I'm stability hungry. I'm independent hungry. But I want to have those conversations before that metaphoric bus. What do you guys do to open those conversations up with a significant other?
Well, I don't have one.
Sorry, Marty. Enjoy. And if anyone in the audience is open to calling
I'm
Marty Bryant.
56 and I like long walks. So I think this is how, and I'm going to correlate it instead of just with the significant other, let's correlate it to the woman with the voice, the woman with the question who's afraid to ask the questions. Write them down. Write them down on a piece of paper, wherever you want to write them down. And whether you're talking to your spouse or your financial advisor, do not walk away until you have answers to these questions. If you're not comfortable with your current advisor and and let's say you are married and you've shared that with your spouse, I think you definitely have to make sure that voice is heard, and you need to explain why you're not comfortable.
And let me loop this back, if that's okay. We started the conversation by identifying that people in general, be it women or men, both really, they come into the office apologetic, feeling that they didn't have enough, right? Then we transition, and all of you brought up the topic of that future self. So all of a sudden, that future self feels like a stranger, right? Studies will show that people have a hard time going, I'm going to plan for 30 years down the road because I barely know who I am today sometimes. How am I going to plan for this person 30 years down the road? That's a stranger. So any tips on going who you are today and still plan, like be comfortable, be strong with who you are today, take care of your finances now, but also plan for this future self and connect that with your client or your friend.
Yeah, you have to make the sacrifice now.
How do you encourage that? How do you?
And what I mean by that is, and we're going to talk about this on another episode of We Are Augusta. And we're going to talk about leaking money. And that is where you have to sacrifice now. And again, back to Jen's treadmill, increasing your lifestyle for the increase in salary and all of that. The sacrifice now means live within your means and don't adjust your lifestyle just because you got a raise. It doesn't mean you have to go buy another house or even buy a second home. It means maybe only go to Starbucks twice a week. Maybe go to Poshmark and buy the shoes or the purse instead of going straight to Louis. So it doesn't mean you don't do things, but maybe just don't do them excessively to where you suddenly are living paycheck to paycheck and you're making $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that happen.
Same.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think the theory there is when you get that raise, save first, spend second.
because
and
your
then
future
you can
self.
spend without that shame and guilt. And should I really be buying the Chanel bag? Well, if you have clarity and you've saved first from your advisor, knowing what percentage that should be, then you don't have that guilt that comes with, the spending.
And your future self is going to say, thank you, right? You might still have the Chanel bag,
Yeah.
but your future self will say thank you because now you have saved what you probably wouldn't have even thought about saving.
And I think one thing I would do with my clients early on is say, okay, out of your paycheck, maybe you put 5% toward your emergency savings, 10% toward investments, and maybe another percentage toward something else. Whatever's left over, because you've now paid yourself first, that can be your bill and fund money, right? And that takes that guilt, hopefully, away. And then when you get the raises, that 5% still increases because your raise just increased.
Right.
Protecting it.
Yeah. And that's the important part, remembering to increase your savings, because now you need to fund an increased lifestyle. You're not going to take a pay cut when you retire. A lot of people say they're going to, but they're not. You're not going to take a pay cut. And so you have to save for that increased standard of living that you're becoming accustomed to. And you're going to hate your financial advisor if they say, oh, well, you remember your expenses were going to be a lot less now. That's what we planned for. Your mortgage is paid off. Your expenses are a lot less. So you only need this much per month, right? Nobody says yes to that.
Yeah, then you're just like setting yourself up to sit at home. Nobody wants to sit at home. I mean, eventually we'll be forced to sit at home when we get to a certain age, all of us.
That's a slow go.
Yeah.
Ooh,
That's almost no-go.
let's go.
Right.
Talk
right,
about it.
when
What's
we get
that,
to
Marty?
no-go. Exactly.
Go, slow go, no-go.
Yep.
Okay, to define that for people that might not be familiar.
So when you first retire, you're in your go-go years.
Love it.
And
First
you're
decade.
Vacationing, you're living your best life, as they say. And then as you get further into retirement,
You slow down a bit.
Slow go.
And
So you're-
hopefully that last 10 years, because are we kind of all thinking 30-year retirement?
Yes.
First
yes.
10 years, second 10 years, last 10 years.
Yeah. And your no-go, it doesn't mean you're dead. It's just people are going to come visit you, right? You're not traveling as much.
you're crocheting.
I don't know. I'm
on your
never,
rocking chair.
I'm never going to crochet.
We heard it here first.
I will
But
never
that
crochet.
might come back to
I'm not
bite Marty
crafty.
Bryant.
I'm the
later
anti-craft.
down.
I cannot craft. I tried. It's not.
Maybe.
It doesn't work.
I feel like it might be good
You
for your
craft
soul.
good jokes, though.
I do. I make up a lot of good jokes. I do say so. I crack myself up.
You
That's all that
crack us
matters.
up.
Okay, pop quiz. For each of you, what are the situations where you personally used to say sorry the most, and what helped you change that habit?
To me, it is consciously removing the word just from the beginning of an introduction, right? The beginning of a phone call. Usually it's a
just
phone
wanted
call.
to
Yeah,
call
I'm
and check
just
in.
calling because, right, just simply remove that word. It makes a big impact because using that word minimizes the importance of whatever comes after it. Oh, I'm just calling because of this small thing. But usually it's important. You wouldn't be picking up the phone to make the phone call if it wasn't important. So it's okay, take up that space, say proudly that I'm calling for this reason, and just own it. It's okay. It is kind of in the vernacular to use that at the beginning of a sentence in our culture, but I intend to remove it from my vocabulary, and I encourage others to do the same.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. Marty, what comes to mind?
So I didn't ever think about it until we started doing this. I didn't realize, I'm like, I don't do that. I don't say sorry. It's not me. I was wrong. But if you get into that state of mind that I have a question, I'm going to ask the question, I'm not apologetic for it, I deserve to have an answer. You're the professional, I'm not. I have a question and I want to know X. I want to know Y. It's how you carry yourself. Sit up tall, present yourself the way you want to be heard. If you hunch yourself in and you don't present who you want the world to see, then why are they going to answer your question? Be bold. Be Augusta, right? I know that sounds cheesy, but I don't find myself apologizing. I don't have anything to apologize for.
You found that power of, you belong at the table. You have worth. You know that when you call, you don't have to say, oh, hey, I'm just checking in, or I just wanted to say XYZ, because guess what? We have a lot to offer. And when you create that mind shift to worthiness, things change.
You don't know when that shift is happening until it's happened and you reflect back. So, when you're walking on the hot coals, whether that's figurative or literally for you, you don't know that you're going through it or what you're accomplishing until you reflect and wait a minute, I feel different now. Something's changed inside of me. And now you come to the table or wherever it is with a different mindset of now you can accomplish and ask the question.
No, I think what you said is great. It is all about mindset. And just remembering that, really everything you guys said, the mindset, taking away just speaking powerfully and like you belong at the table, and being able to say no, because when we do say no to others, we are in some ways saying yes to ourselves, and then we're able to, in return, show up better.
And you don't have to apologize for it.
No, I feel like it's one of those Oprah aha moments of say no to say yes to yourself.
I love that.
I love that.
Because you're saying yes to yourself.
You're saying yes to yourself. And thank you for being with us. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back to We Are Augusta. During the break, you started to discuss something that happened in the last segment. The word fiduciary was used. Marty, could you go into more detail on what a fiduciary is and why that's important?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're hiring professional money managers, licensing becomes important. Most people know the broker license. That's an old school way of managing money, kind of antiquated. Fiduciary is the other side of the fence. That's us. On the fiduciary side, by law, we have to do what's in our client's best interests at all times. So it's a much different level of care. They do what's suitable for you. We have to do best interests. So there is a gray area also between broker and fiduciary. I think this law needs to be changed, but since we don't have deep pockets and we can't go to Capitol Hill and have anything taken care of, it's called dual registration. So that's one of the questions you have to ask. Are you a broker? Are you a fiduciary? Or are you duly registered? Empower yourself that way. That's just a little tiny tidbit of something that you can do and take away, today. If you take nothing else away, do your research on our securities licenses that we hold. So at Trajan, we are strictly fiduciaries.
And we talk about that being a dirty little secret within the industry. Mm-hmm. But in reality, if someone says, well, I'm a fiduciary and a broker, but then they provide you with a mutual fund and they might send you once a quarter or a couple of times a year something in the mail, called a prospectus.
Right.
They want you to decipher what that is. And it's the worst of the worst jargon. And you generally just go, I hope everything's okay, and toss it to the side. But being fiduciary only is key.
I like to describe it too as like the decision making. Who is making the decisions within your portfolio? Because with a fiduciary, the client is delegating to the fiduciary to make those decisions for them. Now, of course, the client has to understand to a certain degree and agree with those decisions. But I like to compare it to the doctor-patient relationship, where when you go to a doctor, you tell them they take all your measurements, they take your blood, they figure out a protocol or a prescription that the patient then uses, versus that's going to be like the fiduciary relationship, versus if you were just going to go to the pharmacy, straight to the pharmacy and pick out your medication, that's kind of more like the broker relationship. Kind of an extreme example, but the fiduciary is obligated to do what's in the best interest of the client based on that client's financial circumstances and goals.
Well, instead of saying sorry by reflex, Jen, what do you actually say now?
I think a better replacement for sorry to bother you would be something like, this is important. I'd like to discuss it.
I love that. This is important. let's have a conversation about it. I like that one. I'm going to steal it.
What was a scary boundary you set that unlocked more freedom? What's one no in work or in life that protected your energy and ultimately helped you earn or keep more?
No, I will not stay married to you.
Go on, tell us
No, I'm
more.
kidding. No, I'm kidding. It didn't go like that.
But close maybe. Tell us more,
God
Marty.
rest his soul.
Rib.
No, I don't have one. I'd have to think about that. I was just joking around. Y'all go first.
I just think, after having the twins and, a 40-minute commute, there's times where you've got to say no. And in turn, it's allowing you to show up better for those people in your life who are relying on you to be able to show up 100%. And so I think, being okay with that and setting up your village, if you will, to allow you to show up fully. I think clients and people in your life alike really respect that and then show up to help support you and not accommodate, but just make sure that, they're working within the boundaries that you set and how those boundaries are okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Zooming out.
How about you, Erin? Is there...
What was the question?
How about you, Erin? The question you just asked us about boundaries, specific something.
What have you said no to?
I mean, listen, I like to say yes to a lot of things. Okay, no.
Right? It's a tough question.
It's a really tough question.
Because it's super open-ended.
And I'm a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
I think honestly, it's when a client, typically an older male, God love them, but when they start to push you for returns, and even though you've had conversations that returns is one part of this gigantic picture, and then come back at them stronger, right? And more stern, or even ask the question, Marty, to your point of, hey, maybe we're not the right fit, because here's how we work and here's what we believe. As a fiduciary, we know emotional habits and emotional reactions is a greater risk to your portfolio and your plan than volatility. Mm-hmm. Can we handle this together? I want to be there for you through it all. But if that doesn't work for you, Mr. or Mrs. Client, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you for trying.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
Okay, if we take a moment to pause and step back, I feel like, and I hope that we've covered a lot today. One of the things I want to ask each of you is, as you've gained that awareness and that confidence to stop saying sorry, to know that you belong at every single table, how has that helped your life and your trajectory in finance or just in general?
I think one way I've really claimed my seat at the table, if you will, is by showing up prepared. And when I'm delivering the recommendations, not over-explaining myself, not softening what they, like you said earlier, when you were talking about, at the beginning of the relationship, you asked them, do you want to hear what you need to hear or what you might want to hear? And really letting them answer that to know if it's a good fit or not. Not every financial plan is very pretty.
Right.
And a lot of them take work and care and intention. But the more we show up and really take our seat at the table and realize that, our expertise matters. Yeah. And not over-explaining the recommendations. I think that's how I've kind of all of the above, stopped apologizing, taking back the space, and showing up as the professional that our clients truly need.
Yeah. Jen, anything to add?
Yeah, I think it ultimately is knowing your purpose. And where does that come from? It comes from realizing your passion. And that comes from initially being curious about something that you genuinely want to learn about. This is a silly analogy, but I think about, have you ever been at the grocery store or any store where there's carts that you push and people are always saying, oh, sorry, oh, sorry. And instead of saying sorry, you don't have to be sorry for being here. You're here for a reason, right? So what is the reason for being here? That's kind of how I analyze that, or the analogy that I like to use, because I try not to say sorry with that grocery cart. It's like, excuse me, oh, I'm headed that way, right? Pardon me, you can say excuse me, but that's different from saying I'm sorry. You're not apologizing for taking up that space. So in life, don't apologize for being here. Know that you're here for a reason, and what is that mission that you're on. So you have to get really clear with yourself about what you care about in order to solidify a goal, or a couple, like 2 or 3, like a small amount of goals that you've really become very clear on. And then your life has purpose, and you're able to really be more fulfilled, show up at that table knowing you're there for that reason, and moving forward without asking questions or apologizing.
And I like that you perhaps stopped apologizing in the grocery store, but you didn't lose the common courtesy or your gentleness or the care or compassion for the people around you.
So throughout my career, we talked about I was a partner in a firm for a long time. And being in, the all things to all people, there was no time for me to apologize for anything, number one. And number two, I took the seat at the table, right? I bought the seat. I sat in the seat. I danced around the table. I did all those things.
But not on the table.
Sometimes on the table, but not the one with the pole. But when I left, when my business partner and I split up, and I was out on my own. So I took my book of business and 2 of the offices and started building my practice back out again. I was, again, on my own. I had to create the table. I had to, build everything on my own. So there was no time for me to, be the shrinking violet.
I feel like we have been very fortunate in finding each other. If you could look back at it yourself, perhaps when you were alone or scared, or you didn't have someone, if someone's listening and doesn't know where to turn, what would you recommend?
So I have been a single mom since 2008. My daughter was 6 years old when we divorced. And 2014 is when my business partner and I split up. And I moved my daughter. Well, we were living in Flagstaff in Arizona, and we moved down to the Valley. Is what everyone calls Phoenix or Scottsdale or Peoria, for those of you who are listening and unfamiliar. And I had to rebuild out the 100% financial was all on me. I did not want my daughter to ever think that we couldn't make ends meet. That was not her burden to bear. I wanted to make sure that she was happy all the time, as happy as she could be. And so it's one of the things that, and I hate to just, as women, it's what we do. You dig deep. You don't know what you're capable of doing. I had no clue what I was doing. I knew that I didn't have a choice, but I have this amount of money with clients, this book of business that I brought down, and it was not significant. And I knew that I had to figure out how I'm going to build it back out again. And I found people that could help me do that. And professionals, they were, groups of professionals that we understand in this industry. But it was still financially fell on my shoulders. And there was a gentleman there that had been coming up to Flagstaff. I'd known him for a number of years. We were with a different IMO. And I called him when my partner and I split, and I said, hey, do you want me? And he said, I'll take you all day long. And I had one person who was loyal to me. Sorry.
And you asked for the help. That's
I
hard.
did.
That is really hard.
I sure did. And there were days with my daughter that I'd get her to school, couldn't get out of bed. You have to find it. It's not going to find you. It'll never find you if you don't have it in you. And then you grind and you work and you believe and you have that faith, and it'll be there. And when I say, there were hard times, She had no idea. Even to this day, she's 23 now. She just got engaged.
Congratulations.
Thank you. If anything resonates, if there's somebody, you never know whose life you're affecting, and you never know when you're affecting someone's life. It can be somebody completely random that one day might come back out of the woodwork and say, hey, I remember when you did this and it inspired me. You don't know who's out there. So live your life the best you can. And when you need a little bit of help, ask for that help. But don't ever give up and believe that it'll be there, and it will be. And if there's anything, reach out to us. We're more than happy to have a conversation no matter where you're at. If you're feeling a little bit lost or you don't know who to turn to, there's so many resources that we have or that you might have that you don't even know about. But find it in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, my purpose was my daughter. And there was a lot of times I didn't believe in myself. I do now, right? I do now.
And as someone who hates to ask for help, I couldn't be more proud of you for taking that initiative.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. But it led me to exactly where I am. Everything I've done in my life, I would never change anything because I wouldn't be sitting here right now if I did.
Yeah. And that's why it's always about the judgment-free zone. Everybody has a story. And it's made you who you are. No need to apologize.
Yeah.
You're here now.
Right. Well, and we've all earned it.
Grind and earned.
We've earned it.
Yeah.
And that's where the work comes in. That's kind of a segue to what my thought is start scared. Even if you don't know how, even if you don't know what you're going to do, even if you feel clueless, you just take that first step, however small it might be, and start scared.
What did that look like for you, Jen?
I don't know, actually. I don't know what that specifically looked like for me, like in a moment that I can crystallize into an amazing story like Marty's. But, I think of an actually one small story where when I first started working in this business in 2008, I called it like I worked in a locker room because it's a bunch of men and just a couple women. And so there was one particular colleague I had, he would ask questions that most others would be afraid to ask. And he would just pipe up with his questions. He would just blurt it out all the time. And the rest of us would kind of be giving each other like side eye, like, did he actually say that? He didn't know that thing, because when you ask a question, you're exposing a point of vulnerability. Yeah. You're now telling everybody that you didn't know that thing. So we're all afraid to ask questions normally. That's where this saying sorry comes from. And so this guy, he would just ask these crazy questions, embarrass himself, if you want to think of it like that. But 6 months into the job, he never did that job before. He got in 6 months later. He was head and shoulders above everyone else in terms of his skill and ability. And he developed a talent that no one could come close to. And so I thought, oh my goodness, I need to be like that. I need to just gloves off, ask the questions. I'm here for me. I'm not here to impress these other people. I'm here for myself. And if you focus on yourself, you will end up impressing the other people as a byproduct. But it's that start scared, gloves off, I'm here for me.
So there's the old saying, life happens when you step outside of your comfort zone. Right? And that's where you expand your territory.
And what comes to mind is you don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great.
Ooh.
Today we focus on voice and boundaries. Next time, we're digging into the harsh reality that women often outlive both their spouses and their savings, and what you can do about it now without fear. This is where the confidence we talked about today turns into concrete longevity planning. Until next time, friends, stay self-aware. Together, we rise. Together, we win. We are powerful. We are you. We are
Augusta.